Welcome to the Brevard County Commission meeting on this, the 8th day of July, which happens to be the 220th day of the year. In this portion of the meeting, before we get down to the serious business of the county, we like to take a lighthearted approach to life and reveal some useless information you may find of interest. Has anybody besides me seen all the dragonflies flying around the county? In fact, they're flying all over Florida. There's hundreds of thousands of them. Did you ever stop to wonder when you saw all those dragonflies how long they lived? Probably not. But it is interesting because when I thought about it, I thought, geez, I wonder how long they do live. Christine, you have any idea how long they live?
24 hours.
There's always got to be one smarty pants. That's correct. It's 24 hours. So I thought that was interesting. So if you find it interesting, good. If you don't, shh, don't say anything. And on this day, there are numerous interesting events that occurred, so I'll mention several. Normally, I just pick out one or two, but there were three. In 1966, Dr. Michael DeBakey inserted the first artificial heart into a human patient. That was in 1966. And in 1974, on this day, President Nixon announced that he would resign on the next day, August 9th. And in 1992, on this day, the very first NBA Dream Team clinched the Summer Olympics and got the gold medal by crushing Croatia, I think it was 117 to 85. So it just seems like yesterday to me. So that, my friends, is the very well may be the most useless information you'll hear today, but hopefully you got some interest out of it. So now we'll get down to the more serious business at hand for our beloved Brevard County, and we'll start with the call to order. This meeting is called to order, and do we have our pastor here?
Pastor David Myers. There he is.
Please stand.
Commissioners and honored guests, great to be with you today, and thank you for the great work that you do. Let us bow our heads and pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your divine favor on our community. We thank you for your protection in the past, and we ask for your protection and covering in the weeks ahead. We recognize our dependence on you, and we acknowledge the frailty of our own abilities. We ask for wisdom and guidance as we attempt to lead our community with good decisions and inspired vision. Keep us in the shadow of the Almighty and lead us into the paths of righteousness. Bless this county with your good favor. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you.
Pastor Myers, would you like to tell us a little bit about your ministry?
Yes, I moved to Brevard County in 1971 when my father took a little small congregation in Palm Bay, First Pentecostal Church. And from that time till now, we've grown to over 2,000 constituents, 5 campuses. But most of all, we're happy to feed over 1,500 people a week through our Hands for Healing ministry. And we're currently building a medical clinic and an orphanage in the country of Haiti. And it's a real honor and a privilege to live in Brevard County and to hopefully positively affect people's lives, both locally and globally.
Well, we're glad to have you here.
Thank you. Honored to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Barfield?
Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the July 13, 2017 special meeting minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. Now we'll move into resolutions, awards, and presentations. First up, I have Emily Schlossberg. We don't have her up. She's not here. Okay. Moving on to resolution, which I have the great honor of doing this evening, recognizing, honoring, and celebrating grandparents raising grandchildren. You folks come up tonight? And please tell us about your organization and some of the things that you're doing. Yeah, face us and speak into the microphone.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here. My name is Lil Hobson, and I've been a volunteer for Grandparents Raising Grandchildren for several years now. This is Mary Ann Sterling. She's our founder and our executive director. This is Karen Mills. She's our assistant director. Mary Ann has terrible laryngitis tonight, so she's asked me to speak for her. And since I'm not normally a speaker, I apologize, but I will be reading from a few notes, if you don't mind. Over 23 years ago, Linda was killed by a hit-and-run driver, leaving behind her 6-year-old son, Matt. His grandmother, Mary Ann Sterling, suddenly found herself in a role of parent again and quickly realized she was not the only one in this situation and had many obstacles to overcome to care for Matt. She formed a support group and had 6 people attend that first one. She founded Grandparents Raising Grandchildren of Brevard County, Florida in 1994. Fast forward to today, GOG has the most support group meetings in the state of Florida, 6 meetings in 6 locations throughout our large county with over 1,300 members. Some of you have heard of this agency, many have not. Yet in most meetings, we ask if anyone in the audience was raised by or knows someone raised by their grandparents, and there is always at least one hand raised. It is not uncommon, but not often talked about. There are many reasons why a child will come into the care of someone other than their parents. Death, sickness or incapacity, and incarceration of the parent are some of the reasons. The opioid epidemic or prescription drug abuse, which is getting a lot of press, is perhaps the biggest reason. Yes, displaced and abused or neglected children are one of the nasty side effects of drug abuse. This is why GRG has taken on the mission of Child First. That mission is to support relative caregivers throughout Brevard County in achieving safety, permanency, and well-being for their families through education, advocacy, and community collaboration. Our vision is that one day all children will live in a safe, loving home with relatives that will help them to develop to their full potential. Living in a place you can call home and knowing someone will always be there for you is something everyone needs, especially children. Statistics report that 1 in 12 school-age children in Brevard are living with relative caregivers, typically their grandparents. That's over 8,500 children. For those who like to crunch numbers, that's saving Brevard taxpayers over $40 million a year by keeping those children out of foster care system. The fact that these children are thriving in their grandparents' homes, however, is priceless. Brevard County is full of wonderful people who truly care about their community. We are very grateful for this opportunity to be recognized this evening for the work we do because we truly believe the child should always be first, and we need the community's support to make this happen. Our funding comes from grants from United Way and some city grants, but also from fundraisers. We have our 2nd annual golf tournament coming up in September, and there are many ways everyone can help support this event. We have some drawing tickets. We need golfers, sponsors, donations of door prizes, so everything helps. Everything makes a difference. If you're interested in learning more about this, please see me. I'm the committee chairperson. But if you'd like any more information about our agency, we have a clipboard that we'll put on the side. You can put your name and number. We'd be happy to call you, or you can take a flyer and call us. You may not need our help, but someone you know may. So if we're here for you. Thank you, Commissioner Smith, and the rest of the board for your time and for this honor. We're very humbled and grateful and consider you all to be now part of my famous hashtag Friends of GRG. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you say 8,500 kids?
8,500 children in Brevard County are being raised by someone other than their parents.
Wow.
That's 1 in 12 school-age kids. They don't have a good number on the children that aren't in school yet. And many grandparents pick up that baby from the hospital.
Those children are considered homeless.
And those children that are being raised by their grandparents are being considered homeless. They're
In the school system.
in the school
In
system.
the school system. It really did not know that. Well, thank you for all you do. And you're going to leave some pamphlets on the wall back there, so if anybody has any interest in giving one to a golfer, if you folks don't golf, maybe you do know somebody that does, and you can help these folks out.
Be happy to. Thank you very much. There'll be some flyers about the agency there as well, and some business cards or identification of our website. And we're on Twitter and Facebook, so please stay our friends.
Okay, we're going to take a picture. bunch of grandparents right here raising grandchildren. Thank you all for being here as well.
Thank you.
Well, then, I will read it. I was so enamored with what you were saying, I didn't even realize I didn't read the proclamation, so now I'm going to do that. No, no. Got it right here. All right, you ready? Whereas Grandparents Raising Grandchildren of Brevard County, Florida, Inc. is an organization whose mission is to improve the lives of abused, abandoned, and neglected children living in relative care families by providing advocacy, training, and support. And whereas currently over 8,500 children are living in relative care families in Brevard County, and whereas Grandparents Raising Grandchildren of Brevard's goal is to ensure permanent placement with relatives in lieu of foster care, address special needs of children being raised by relative caregivers, and advocate for relative caregivers and raise awareness of their needs. And whereas the organization provides cost-free, community-based programs and services for any relative caregiver that includes weekly therapeutic support goods, crisis counseling for relative caregivers, workshops and educational programs, advocacy on behalf of caregiver families, community outreach and education, recreational activities and respite, holiday assistance, advocacy for the rights and concerns of caregiver-headed families, and emergency resource referrals for food, clothing, and infant supplies. And whereas Grandparents Raising Grandchildren of Brevard's hope is that one day all children will live in a safe, loving home with relatives that will help them to develop into their full potential, because living in a place you can call home and knowing that someone will always be there for you is something everyone needs, especially children. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, do hereby recognize, honor, and celebrate Grandparents Raising Grandchildren of Brevard for their devoted efforts, contributions, and accomplishments to their grandchildren and their community. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 8th day of August, 2017, and I make the motion to do so.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to vote no? Passes 5-0. Congratulations, and we're so proud of you. Okay, next resolution, recognizing Judge Kathleen Clark for her service to the people of Brevard County and honoring her on the occasion of her retirement. Is she here? Okay, Judge, I'm going to tell you what to do. Nobody ever told you that before, did they?
Just my kid.
Okay, well, I'm going to read this first, and then you can tell us about your service to our community. Whereas the Honorable Kathleen B. Clark was first appointed to the county court bench in 1998 by Governor Lawton Chiles. In 2001, Judge Clark was elected by her peers to serve as the county court administrative judge. And whereas Judge Clark received her bachelor's degree from the University of Florida in 1975 and subsequently received her Juris Doctor from the University of Florida School of Law in 1979. Whereas following law school, Judge Clark served as an assistant state attorney, assistant public defender, guardian ad litem attorney, and part-time instructor at Brevard Community College's Law Enforcement Academy. And whereas in 2003, Judge Clark was recognized by the National Association for the Mentally Ill for her work establishing the first mental health court in Brevard County. Whereas, in addition to demonstrating the highest level of commitment to the judiciary, Judge Clark was an active leader in the community, serving on numerous boards and committees, including the Haven, American Red Cross, Crossroads, Inc., Daily Bread, and the Commission on Mental Health and Community Solutions. Whereas, since 1998, Judge Clark has run unopposed to retain her judicial seat, and whereas throughout her outstanding career, Judge Clark remains steadfast in her commitment to public safety and protecting citizens' rights. Now therefore be it resolved that the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners does hereby recognize Judge Kathleen B. Clark for distinguished service to the people of Brevard County and honors her on the occasion of her retirement. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 8th day of August 2017. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. Congratulations.
I'd like
Okay.
to say thank you.
Do you have anything else to say about your years on the bench?
On the bench, it has been an honor to serve the residents of Brevard County. It's a very special privilege, and I'm grateful for this recognition.
Do you
So,
have
thank you.
Do you have a most memorable case?
Oh, there's so many.
Would you like to share one with us? No. Okay, sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I understand. There's so many.
Okay.
But I've learned so much, and I
Well,
really appreciate it.
We're very proud of you, and we're glad you're in our community.
Who's
Thank
with
you.
you today?
We have Judge Dugan and Judge Babb.
I saw them, that's why.
Yes, we need to recognize our judges, wonderful colleagues, and great support that I have.
Okay. Now we're going to give you this. You can hang that on the wall somewhere. Okay, next up, we have the consent agenda. And does anyone wish to pull any of the items?
I'm good.
Okay, then we have no cards on the consent agenda. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the,
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. And I would like to mention and 2A8, the joint participation agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation. This was a fuel farm upgrade, and because our staff worked so hard on this, they proved that a little innovation and creativity goes a long way. They saved over $62,000 on this project by engineering it and doing the work themselves. So I just wanted to do a little hats off thank you to our staff. Okay, public comments. Mr. Charles Tovey.
Charles Tovey, 2555 Roberts Road, Melbourne. Here I am again, beating the dead horse. Well, I wouldn't have a cat if there wasn't hope, and I do have hope in our community and our leaders. I want to speak on the accountability or the neglect of accountability for the mistakes, or is it fraud, or is it dereliction of duty? What is it? When I go to court and all the issues, the points that the county attorney's office made against me, they were found to be mistakes. And yet you continued, and still today, I have nothing. And why? Because of what was done in the past and was hidden or neglected or contempt of court from the mayor imposing her restraining order on me, my family, and everybody I know. I couldn't go in the town of Palm Shore. I can't go in there now. I can't go nowhere now and be safe about it, and I have PTSD or something. Anyhow, contempt of court, it was neglected, overlooked. The points I raised in court, they were all the issues that I was brought to court. They were admitted mistakes by Elizabeth Bell. I think that was the county attorney at the time. Sorry, Your Honor, we made mistakes. And yet they perceived to, yay. What do you have? And excuse me for being, I don't practice my speeches. I'm not up here to be. Anyways, you have a permanent.
For not practicing, you do pretty well.
Permanent jurisdiction on my property. Why? I want to start my business up. I am looking for you to reverse everything, Mr. Knox. I want everything reversed. There was no reason for none of it. You took everything I have, everything I had to make a living, and the assailants, my neighbors, that everybody else gets recognized for their right to live. I don't get, no, I have to watch hundreds of people every day because they're going to do something sexually to me because they don't like me or what I say, and they're going to beat me into next week, and I better get in my house, old man. And I went up the day that the county raped me and my property. I was up at the office as Sheriff Ivey asking him what to do about protesting on my property, and it's okay. I can't even live. I don't get my mail at my box. All these issues are, I've been attacked every which way, and here I sit. This is my only alternative, to come up here anytime I can and able to. I'll be up here until this gets resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tovey. We have no other public comments.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment, please?
Sure, absolutely. You have the floor.
I was remiss, I didn't, I was going to pull 2D3, and this is the confirmation of John Denninghoff as our Assistant County Manager. And I just think that we need to recognize this because John has done a phenomenal job and for this county, especially when he's in Public Works, and he's taken on a lot as an interim, and I think it's time to take that interim away and just let you know we appreciate what you do.
We do.
I second that. Here, here. Good job, Mr. Barfield. I don't care what other people say. Okay, moving into 4A.
4A is a petition to vacate a portion of a 20-foot wide public drainage easement. This is in Woodlawn Estates, Section 2, Melbourne Beach. The purpose is to allow construction of a pool and deck enclosure, and we have received no negative comments on this issue.
Mr. Tobias, this is your district. Do you have any comments on this?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve 4A?
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. 4B.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is the second and final public hearing for our annual action plan. It's a requirement of HUD for our funding, both CDBG and home. We are requesting that the board approve the plan, authorize the county manager or designee to sign all contracts, budgetary changes with risk management and county attorney approval, and authorize the department to do secure contractors through competitive processes, either bids, RFPs, so on and so forth. We have received one comment to date, and that has to do with, we want to see us increase the amount of support for low-income households that increasingly need assistance obtaining and retaining affordable rental housing, which we would like to see also, but there is a limit to the amount of funding that we have and get from the feds and the state.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve
So moved.
the annual action plan? We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. 5A.
Mr. Chairman, 5A is a
due of the ethics code, which we had talked about some time ago. We brought it back, trying to combine as many of the board comments on the ethics discussions that we had last time into an ordinance. So we came up with two versions of it, one of which has a Citizens Advisory Committee, which would hear violation complaints, and the other of which does not have that committee, because we weren't sure which one the board would want to go with. So we brought it here for discussion tonight. This is a preliminary to the public hearing. We would be asking for authorization to advertise one of these two versions.
Comments from the board? We do. We have one. Pam LaSalle? Oh, that was 5A. No, that's right, 5A. Pam LaSalle. Yes.
Pamela Salviera. As proposed, I see this as a modest improvement in transparency. There is some control on commissioners' activities, but I feel it could do more. I don't understand what purpose it will serve to register lobbyists if there's no contact log and record of that. There should be a contact log with the usual who, what, when, where, and why. Lobbyists could also be required to report their compensation. A log can be a database or it can be a physical paper log, both which can be funded by collecting fees from the lobbyists. If there were provisions for procurement practices in this ordinance, there could also be a cone of silence required on the bidding processes. A cone of silence limits communications between a local government and lobbyists or vendors for a period of time preceding a contract negotiation. Procurement contracts, voting conflicts, campaign activities, and campaign finance are all areas that can be improved with ethics regulations, which I don't see addressed in this proposal. The advisory board option sounds like an ethics commission, so I don't really understand why it isn't being called an ethics commission. Perhaps it's a level of authority. Ethics regulation, creating an independent inspector general, I feel would be a comprehensive improvement. The chairman recommended pursuing an investigation into the creation of an IG, but when Commissioner Tobias suggested it be done in a workshop, it was rejected. I would like to see this board examine, in clear view of the public, a comprehensive ethics regulation to also include the creation of an Office of the Inspector General. To remind everyone, an IG works to reduce and eliminate fraud, waste, and mismanagement in government. And it is my observation they more than pay for themselves in counties which have them. I have 2 points for thought along these lines. We have a $1 billion budget. No matter how you categorize it, the more taxes the county receives, the more value exchange opportunities are created. And someone willing to commit fraud just needs to find a way to convert that cash, that value, to cash while they remain undetected. How does government act when no one who is independent is watching? Is it transparent, or does it justify a sense of entitlement? I just wish y'all were doing more. Thanks.
Pleasure of the board. Sure. We have Commissioner Pritchett.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready for Section 9 right now. Maybe sometime down the road we could discuss that again. I'm not going to vote in favor of that section. We were given an option of leaving it in or leaving it out. I'm okay with the rest of it. Section 6, I sent you guys out ahead of time what I think would make that work really well. When we discussed at the beginning, and I think Commissioner Isnardi brought up, of a registered lobbyist that's registered being in there, so I asterisked that and put that in. So if you've got that piece of paper I sent to you guys. So I would like that put in, that permitted to conduct lobbying activities as a registered lobbyist as defined by the previous definition. And on Part B, from any entity solely under the county's jurisdiction, I think that needs to put in there because I'm not sure how far-spreading we would be otherwise. And then, Mr. Knox, can you give me a definition of what the county's jurisdiction is, if you wouldn't mind?
Well, we're living in a charter county, so the charter pretty well dictates what the board can and can't do. The board, there's a provision in the charter saying that, for example, all the constitutional officers, which are now county officers, have same authority they have under the Constitution of the state of Florida and under state laws, unless otherwise provided in the charter. So in order to change anything to do with the constitutional officers or county officers, like the property appraisers, the clerk, the tax collector, and the sheriff, you'd have to have a charter amendment to change it. That's the jurisdiction of the board goes to the departments of the board and to dependent special districts created by the board or that the board is empowered to regulate.
Okay. And then I also thought, I think 2 years is probably fine. I understand the 4, but I'm thinking that's an election cycle. So if somebody up here, we're not able to make promises to somebody to get a job right away. There'd be a 2-year cool-off period. And so I think that would eliminate the problem of that. So I also would like to go ahead and adjust that back to 2 years as we used to have in the BCC 20. But I am good with the rest of it.
Commissioner Tobias, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When it comes to the advisory board, I think it was ill-named. It's more of an adjudication body now, which is fine, but my suggestion, if we are to continue that, would be to amend Section 9J. And while we have these highly qualified people, I would like to also give them authority to make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on amending the ethics code to more effectively enforce the intent of this chapter. So instead of them just looking at the wrongdoings, I think you've got some talented folks that could provide suggestions how to make this a more comprehensive plan. So that would be my suggestion if we were to go with the advisory committee, but I think we need to punt that one back over to Commissioner Isnardi, since that was her great idea when it came to that section. And then on the change solely, my understanding was that would allow somebody to go into something that was quasi, sort of like the West Melbourne maybe CRA that is between not only the county but the city as well. So I don't know how that alters it, but would have no problem with that. However, when we were dealing with the prohibition, 6 years is where we started, and the reason 6 years was probably effective would be because if Commissioner Barfield decided that he wanted to get out and become a lobbyist all of a sudden, I don't suggest it, but if he wanted to take a decrease in salary and then waited 2 years, he still would have influence over the 4 of us up here, assuming we continued along our path as county commissioners. He's worked with us. There's a lot of deference. Mr. Barfield is a great guy, and I certainly
Speak
would.
For yourself.
Yeah, I certainly would open the door for him, and would value, unfortunately, probably more him than certainly other folks that would come through the door. So what this does is the 6 years would take it completely off the table to make sure that if Mr. Barfield decided to, or Commissioner Barfield decided to step down, he couldn't exert, not that he would, but he could not exert that influence on us. During the meeting, I think, I know Chairman Smith came up with a good compromise of 4 years. I thought that didn't go to taking it off the table, but certainly was worthy of examination. And if we find out that, maybe we need to ramp that up to 6, that would be great. But I think the 4 is a great starting point that will take that off the table. So I certainly would. I preferred it 6, but I thought the compromise that was thrown out there is good to remain at 4. So those were my 2 suggestions. If we go forward with the advisory committee, to add an advisory role and to keep the 4 years put.
Any other comments? Commissioner Snarty?
You know, in light of recent events, in at least my personal life, I fear, I love the idea of the committee, but I just want to make sure that we don't have people filing, frivolous sort of things. And I see that there's penalties in here, but I don't want this committee to be used as a tool. While somebody running for office may not file a complaint, it may be somebody working with them when they're running for office. And that's my only fear, that we have these experts that we ask very nicely to be on this committee, and we say, we'd like you to serve and we appreciate your expertise. And then for them to be abused for political purposes is my only fear. It doesn't mean that I want to take the idea off the table at all, because I like the idea of additional oversight, the idea of a separate body that reviews any concerns they have. I don't know how we address that. I don't know how one decides if one issue appears, at least on the surface, to be more retaliatory or politically driven versus another. I'm not sure, because if we investigate everything and then everybody's investigating 50 complaints because somebody doesn't like, and I'll use Commissioner Barfield only because he was just using an example. Sorry.
This is beat up gym night.
But if somebody was going after Commissioner Barfield, then all of a sudden he's got 30 ethics complaints. First off, it looks bad on him, even if not a single one of them is true. And that's not fair to the commissioner that's either running for office or the private citizen that's running for office. And that's my biggest fear with the committee. But I'm torn with the idea, because I like the additional community oversight. Maybe the Inspector General is something we look at as an alternative. And I know that's a far-out idea for some, but maybe that's the answer. But I don't know that a committee, I would hate to ask a judge or a retired judge or an attorney friend of mine to sit on a board and then just be abused for political purposes.
Good point.
I've watched them do it with our newspaper, so I don't want to do it with our board.
I hadn't even thought of that aspect.
I didn't either until I was reading through all the legalese a few days ago, going through the agenda. It's a very good job, by the way, Mr. Knox, of putting this together. It actually opened my eyes quite a bit to what the potential good and potential harm a committee could do.
Commissioner Barfield.
First, I want to address something that Ms. LaSalle said about the cone of silence. Especially with vendors, if I'm right, we have a blackout period and all that's in our procurement documents where you can't have contact. Is that correct?
That's correct. In purchasing, we do have a policy that provides for a cone of silence, and that is all vendors are notified of that when they go through the bidding or the RFP process.
Okay. My concerns are very similar to what Commissioner Isnardi said. There's too much with the advisory committee. It's not nailed down enough. And I can see the same thing happen. It can become a political witch hunt if it's not addressed correctly. And that to me, I don't like what's in there with this. It may be something to address later on, but I don't think it's clear enough yet to even do that. And so I'd like to eliminate that completely. I've got some other areas too. I'm okay with I like the 2 years, but if that's, I'm not really that concerned about the 4 years either. But I'd rather see the 2 years for consistency. If the thing to consider about the advisory board, there's always the opportunity for any citizen can go ahead and file a complaint with the state attorney's office or FDLE or whatever. There's an enforcement mechanism to do that. So it's not like it's totally up to this advisory board. Any citizen can address us. That's the way the system works. There needs to be, if we do eliminate, there's Section 1, and if we do either way, if we do away, well, no, if we do away with advisory committee, that wording will have to be changed in section 1 at the end, and I just recommend we leave it as the state attorney's office. But that's something I can do with red lines. But I have some other ones. The section of prohibition on acceptance of gifts. I understand the nature of this, but I also work in the federal level, and when you don't put a dollar figure on it, what happens is if you have a pen that has the law firm's name on it that could have come in, you're accepting a gift, because believe me, people get legalese on something like this. So what I'd recommend, and I think currently it's $100. I would just put it at $25. Any item, put a number on it, that's low enough. Still, if I think with that, if you pick up a notebook or something like that, at whatever, it's less than $25. I think that's reasonable. Let's see what else. And I'll tell you, after all the discussion we had on this and the concern about the lobbyists and how that was written before, it addresses all of my concerns. It's very clear what a lobbyist is, what lobbying is, and so I'm good with all that. So that's really my only concerns.
Commissioner Nardi, you have the floor.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm okay with the 4 years. I didn't mention that during my comments. And also, too, I mean, people know we have the Florida Commission on Ethics to address any issues that you have with the commission. And as long as our ethics, our code of ethics are more strict, then you would be able to file a complaint right to this commission if you saw that, anybody up here has violated anything. So, and it's very public that way as well. So it doesn't become a punitive thing or a political matter. So I'm okay with this as well. I like the idea of the 25 limit, because if you've ever been even out meeting a constituent and you're standing in line and somebody picks up your coffee, you don't want to be held and legally responsible for that. And if it's $1, so I'm okay with the dollar threshold of $25.
Commissioner Pritchett.
I was going to make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, I want to make a motion to approve the document with the changes that Mr. Barfield suggested for the gift to have a limit of $25 without Section 9, and the changes that I submitted with 4 years instead of 2 years, adding in the definition of the lobbyist and the word solely.
Mr. Chair, can I make one
Absolutely. I'm just waiting for her to finish.
Sorry.
Did I leave something out?
I know on the $25, I think it's a good point. However, $25 is a lot of money if I have a lobbyist that's taking me out to dinner every night, and I don't think that is, not that I have a lobbyist that takes me out to dinner every night. So what I would say is $25 per year or something like this, because if no gift was limited to $25, theoretically, we could go out to Outback every single day. So I think, you'd have to leave a lot of pens or notebooks in somebody's office to hit the $25 threshold in a year. But certainly, I see a loophole that the $25 could provide.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
So,
And Commissioner Nardi and I remember this happening years ago at NASA, you couldn't go get a cup of coffee from the coffee in a meeting if it was a contractor. You had to put money in the thing, for that coffee. And seriously, I mean, those things have to be hashed out a little bit better. But if you want to, that makes sense to me. And it gives us time to think about it anyway. We can come back again, but $25 is fine.
The motion would include $25 gift.
So let me get this straight so I understand. So I understand that if you're representing XYZ company and you want to take me out to dinner 5 nights in a row,
It would be okay.
it would be limited to $25 for the total. So if it was $25 first night, they couldn't do it.
Well, if we said a gift to $25, then a gift on the first night could be $25. the gift on the second night could be $25. The gift on the third night could be $25.
Okay.
And I think that, that kind of adds up as stuff goes on. We functioned in Tallahassee as zero, and we did put dollars in cups, or we just didn't eat there.
Okay.
And yes, it certainly was problematic, but you always had a couple dollars. Even if a valet was picking up, driving your car, you never knew, what the case may
Okay,
be.
so what's the wording? How's this going to work?
No more than $25 a month. I'm not. You would have to leave
Per lobbyist or per month?
per lobbyist. Yes, yeah. That would allow a pen or a six-pack of pens to, come in. I don't think anyone's going to cheat the system, but certainly that is a loophole that one could work.
Okay. Mr. Knox, help me navigate this.
Okay, I believe you need a second to the motion.
Okay, so, but you were saying before that we needed to make a decision tonight on version 1, on version 2.
Yeah, I think that's the major issue.
I made
Okay.
a motion leaving out section 9.
Okay,
Which is the second one without the...
Yes, sir.
right, okay.
Yes, sir.
So we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Pritchett, and do we have a second?
Second.
And does everybody understand what we're voting on? I'm good. Okay,
Okay, the document is drafted with no section 9 in our motion. Limit of $25 gifts from lobbyists per year, and the changes...
per lobbyist.
Per lobbyist, and the changes in section 6, adding the definition of a lobbyist and as a registered lobbyist, and the word solely after entity, and we're going to leave it at 4 years.
We good? Okay. We have a motion, and we have a second by, who gave me,
I did second.
Mr. Commissioner Barfield, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, 5B.
Commissioners, this item is, staff put it on as unfinished business. After all the work that the board did throughout the early spring to look at what our budget looked like and what areas you wanted prioritized moving forward, we had a lot of opportunity to discuss road-related issues. And as you know, we've made some significant progress, I believe, in a variety of areas, specifically in the area of repaving, where we moved in the last 2 years from 8 miles to 25 to 55 miles. And we also, as part of the proposed tentative budget, have identified an additional $2 million to be used for leveraging some reconstruction of roads that we have significant need to repair that we already have partially identified dollars for. As we had that dialogue, the other part of the discussion that occurred is, once we've reallocated available resources to the boards after the board's careful scrutiny of the budget, what more, if anything, could be done. And unfortunately, during part of that discussion, we gave the board information that indicated that relating to the LOGT, that you would have to make a decision by July 1st in order to effectuate, if the board so chose, on either the 5 pennies that were available or the 9 cent that was available. That you'd have to do that by July 1st to make it effective for January 1. Shortly after that dialogue, staff learned that, in fact, that we have until October to make that decision. So this particular agenda item just provides the board the opportunity to have some discussion and/or direction to staff about what potential additional revenue sources the board would like to consider in light of where we are today as we move forward with continuing our efforts to maximize the opportunity to improve the overall road infrastructure within the county. As part of the agenda, we have provided for you potential additional revenue sources, what those sources are in terms of the 9th cent, which would be approximately $2.5 million that would be available. The board would have the opportunity, if they so chose, to pass that by a supermajority, or by 3 commissioners, it could go to referendum. The 5 pennies, which would be shared, you can go 1 through 5 of that if the board so chose. That would be an approximate annual amount of an additional $11.7 million, which would have to be split with the municipalities. The county would get approximately $5.5 million, and the municipalities would get about $6.2 million if the board chose to look at that option. Once again, a supermajority would be available, and the board could do that, or it could go by a referendum by 3 votes. There are 2 additional areas that we just wanted to make sure the board was aware of. One was a public service tax, which I believe the vast majority of counties throughout Florida, I think there's only 14 out of the 67 that do not have that tax, and a lot of the cities within Brevard have it. That is available as well, but that is by referendum because of the county charter. That's how they were able to pass it, by just a vote of their council. But under the county's charter, it would have to go to referendum if the board wanted to look at that option. And the last is an infrastructure sales tax, which is a half-penny tax, which would provide $43 million a year. The county share would be $24 million. The city share would be $19 million. A lot of this was discussed by the Blue Ribbon Committee several years ago. We did also attach for the board's information 2 additional spreadsheets that talk about total funding available per mile in the county under these various revenue streams that could be available, and shows you what different counties, Polk, Volusia, Indian River, Osceola, Orange County, and Seminole, all surrounding counties, what resources they have available for their road systems. And when you look at what they are currently doing, you can see how much revenue is available per mile of road within each of those jurisdictions. So with that, Mr. Denninghoff is available. I'm available to answer any additional questions and ready to take on any direction that the board may choose to give if they're so you're so inclined to do so.
We have 1 card, Richard Charbonneau.
Richard Charbonneau, Satellite Beach. I'd like to just take a second here to deviate from the program and congratulate City Manager Abate. Glad to have you join us. I really am. And John Denninghoff, sort of congratulations, but I hate seeing you leave from the highway thing, because who the heck's going to figure it out now? You had it all figured out as best as anybody could. No comment. I think on this gas thing, we're sort of just kind of beating around the bush here. I mean, we got 1 commissioner that wants it, 1 commissioner that's going to second it because she seconds whatever that commissioner does, 2 people that are against it, and 1 person that's a swing vote. That's it. Same as we had before.
Okay. Pleasure of the board. I don't think that we need to be making decisions tonight. I think the purpose of this was to bring it to light, make it available to us, let us know exactly what our options are. We have until, what, October 1st, Mr. Abate?
You'd have to take action prior to October 1st in order to make it effective if you wanted to do that by January.
Okay. So, You know, there's a lot to be thought of here. We have a reconstruction backlog estimated at $86 million. We have unfunded road capacity needs of $389 million. Those are major numbers. And so, Mr. Denninghoff, I know you're not in the position you were 2 months ago, but would you like me to ask Andy up here to answer my question? What are our options here, and what happens if we don't do anything? Or would you like to field that question yourself?
I can probably answer that question.
Okay.
I haven't forgotten what I knew 2 months ago, or at least
that's
most of it I remember.
That's
anyway.
good to hear.
The inevitability with what we have done in the last, I'll say, 6 months or so with modifications to funding, we've taken care of the growth of the backlog, and to me that's a major accomplishment. It's a major step in the right direction. We have also slowed, and I have to emphasize the word slowed, the growth of the reconstruction portion of that backlog. I don't expect it to grow real rapidly, but it will grow somewhat for a few years, and then it'll level out. And with the $2 million that is going to go towards reconstruction, if that continues forward, then that's a significant step in the right direction as well over a long period of time. To take care of the reconstruction backlog is probably the next item of business that really needs to be addressed. There's a lot of folks out there with roads that are beyond the point of resurfacing, and it would be an unfortunate, I don't want to say misspending, but less than ideal spending of taxpayer resources to resurface those roads. They need to be reconstructed, and then they'll be in a very good position to stay out of reconstruction because we're taking care of the resurfacing needs. So the critical thing for maintenance is to begin to address that reconstruction. And by the way, I would add, included in the agenda report are other items that we don't spend as much time talking about, such as sidewalks and traffic signals and such. They also are underfunded in terms of maintenance. Finally, if we don't take care of those things, then we will, in my view, be neglecting many of the taxpayers in the county, and will be negatively impacting their property values and eventually their safety. On the capacity side of things, which we've spent fairly little time talking about recently, eventually the capacity will become such an issue that we will by statute not be allowed to issue permits for new development, and that will have legal consequences which are pretty severe, and I can't tell you when that's going to happen. It'll happen on an individual road-by-road basis, and it takes a long time to get the roads widened and additional capacity brought in. We have forestalled a lot of that problem by building an ITS system, and we're not expanding it at this point, but it is helping us deal with capacity issues in a much better way. But eventually, even with that, we will finally exceed the capacity of our roads. And so failure to address these issues in a timely manner will have severe consequences down the road for a great many people in our community.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Pritchett.
Looking at this, I know when we were going through the budget before and trying to find money for roads, then the county manager came back with a budget that's actually pretty good. So my thought on this was, like you said, John, we've been able to take care of the resurfacing, and we stopped the growth of the reconstruction inventory that we were having a problem with. In the budget that Mr. Abate presented us, there's also a nice little extra bit of funding that we're using for some reconstruction, which is good. So the budget we have this year, I think it's a good budget to start out with this year, and I think this might not be the best year to go ahead and do this. This might be a good idea for discussion down the road. But on that thought, I'm never against taking something out to ballot and let people vote on it if it's something they'd like to do. So if again, this is going to be a conversation. I'm not real driven to do this right now. I think we have an adequate budget right now. We are going to have to deal with it, but I would like to take some time over the next year or so and discuss how we're going to do this. But y'all could change my mind. But I do like the 9th cent. I think for one penny, you get a good bang for the buck for roads for the county. And I probably would not have a lot of heartburn ever going to referendum with any of the others either. So that's my thought, but I don't feel any panic right now in doing these things right now currently with the budget our county manager presented.
Commissioner Tobias.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I understand by October 1 is the deadline. When would that process have to start? Would we have to do this through ordinance if we were to have 4 votes? I mean, would we need to public advertise and then 2 readings? So, I mean, obviously we can't do it on October 1st. When would the logistics of it, if we were to go through with this, when would that process need to start?
The exact details of it I'm not entirely familiar with, but I do know that we would have to have the ordinance, and it would be an ordinance, would have to be recorded with the Secretary of State in Tallahassee by October 1st. And what that would mean for us is that we'd have to have a legislative intent, and then we'd have to have an ordinance hearing on that. I don't know if it requires 2 for this one or not. Just
Mr.
one.
Knox, you would probably be able to answer that? Just one.
So that's the timeline to be able to do that, would be 2 board meetings at a minimum.
Commissioner Barfield?
Yeah, kind of related to this, and the 4 of us went to Washington, D.C. for a meeting of all of the state of Florida county commissioners at the executive office building at the White House. This is an item that the president is doing where every state county commissioners come and meet with them all at once, and they have established the interagency contacts for every part of government there. Well, I'm going to focus in on the one on infrastructure. The president's assistant for the infrastructure, DJ Gribben, he spoke and then answered questions. And he got beat up quite a bit about permits and everything else. But one of the things he said, and this relates directly to this, is that the way things operate now on the federal gas tax, the federal gas tax is at the local level, it's where you drive, and the money goes to the federal government. Goes to the federal government, they take their cut off of it, then they send it back to the states. So what they're talking about doing is cutting out the middleman. Instead, it'll be collected at the county level, it'll be collected at the state level, then it'll be reimbursed back to that county based on what the mileage or what the accumulation was. And that could be a good accumulation of money. I mean, it could be pretty good. We'll see how it goes, but that's one of the things they're doing, and that could affect us where we actually get some more money coming in, because it would be more. So I just want to bring that up.
What I will hasten to add, that's an if. That's something that they desire, but it is an if.
But at least they're having a discussion,
Right.
which we've
I
never
think
heard
that's,
before.
yeah, I know. I was one of the commissioners that went on that, and I got to tell you, I was very, very impressed with the fact that our president has tried to eliminate a lot of the red tape, governmental red tape, and make Washington available to us at the grassroots level. And if that, and I don't have any doubt that he will continue doing that, but I think that's going to be will have a huge effect on getting things done locally. But getting back to this issue, any other comments? Commissioner Nardi?
I would just say, we have things in place that take care of, collecting additional taxes through our TDC, our tourist development tax and so forth. I think this tax hits our residents, and I don't think, given that people are just finally getting back on their feet, and it may not sound like much to some, but it may mean the difference to another. So I'm not okay with this right now. I think I'll just echo what Commissioner Pritchett said. we finally look like we're actually doing something this year with the infrastructure, and I'm pretty excited about that. We don't know what's coming next year as far as the additional homestead, and I'm a little nervous about that. So I definitely am not comfortable with doing this right now. I don't think it's fair to ask our residents to give more when they're just finally back working and back on their feet, and the economy's picking up, and their home values have finally increased, and then we're going to hit them with a gas tax, because I don't think that's fair.
Well, I might point out, the other side of that coin is that if you had a gas tax, you're really taking it off the backs of the property owners, because you're not increasing the ad valorem tax, you're creating a user tax that out-of-towners and visitors would help pay, and it wouldn't just be on the backs of residents. So it's something to consider, but I'm with you. I don't know that we need to be rushing into this. We have at least another 4 or 5 meetings that we can discuss this and do research on it and go from there, unless somebody has some reason that they want to make some kind of motion or move forward tonight. So I want to thank our staff for bringing this to our attention and giving us our options, and we'll take all of those under consideration. Okay. Let's slow down here. We only have a couple more items. We do have Emily Schlossberg here, and she has a little presentation for us, and we can take a little break to listen to her. Ms. Schlossberg, would you like to introduce yourself and why you're here?
Thank you. I'm Representative Emily Schlossberg, and I represent District 91, which is Boca, Delray, and Boynton, and I really appreciate you putting this issue on the agenda. I was almost killed, and my twin sister was killed in 1996 in a car crash. And I'll never forget, like, in the hospital, I asked my dad, like, how are we going to go on? What are we going to do? And he says, we're going to make sure other people don't go through what we did. So my dad ran for office, and he served for 12 years, and I'm following in his footsteps, doing the same. And my number one priority is public safety. And I've tried, okay, does that work? Do you guys have the PowerPoint here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Okay.
There we go.
So, how do we make it operate? Is there like a...
Help is coming to your rescue.
Okay. Oh. Thank you. Okay. So, motor vehicle crashes are the #1 cause of death for teen drivers. And in Florida, crash reports rose 10% from 2015 to 110,544. And that's just from distracted driving. So the current law, let's say that a 16-year-old goes to the DMV, passes the test, he drives out the test, texting mom, dad, and friends, oh, I passed the test. Currently, there's nothing that an officer can do. He can watch the 16-year-old do that. He can't pull him over because it's only a secondary offense. So the young driver, or any driver, would have to be doing something other than texting. And putting a phone in the hands of an inexperienced driver is incredibly deadly. What I did was I went back before 2010, seatbelts were a secondary offense. And 2009 it was passed, but the first full year I went to my county and I looked. And in my county alone, over 40,000 tickets were issued for seatbelt violations, the first year after it was a primary offense. Fast forward to 2016, under 10,000 tickets were issued. That shows when you take a law from secondary to primary, the numbers are huge. You know, it compels compliance. In 2016, drivers aged 20 to 24 were responsible for the highest number of distracted driving crashes, followed closely by 25 to 29-year-olds and 15 to 19-year-olds. In fact, drivers under the age of 30 accounted for more than 20,000 distracted driving crashes. Parents set the example for their children. Looking at a survey of the states, Florida is only one of 4 states that enforce this as a secondary offense, other than Nebraska, Ohio, South Dakota. In Texas, the governor vetoed it 2 years ago, and then they just passed it as a primary after 13 people were killed on a church bus. 2 days ago in my district, in Loxahatchee Groves, a woman was driving and she hit a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old on their ATVs. She was texting, and I guess they're in the hospital. So in the legislature, in the Senate, it passed out of 2 committees, and in the House, the bill did not get a hearing. However, we did have a distracted driving workshop, and they actually testified that the only thing that we can do to prevent more injuries and prevent more fatalities is make it a primary enforcement. Because of the fact, awareness campaigns are great and they're important, but they're not as effective as making a primary law. Every other single traffic violation in the state of Florida is a primary offense. This is the only secondary offense. It doesn't make any sense. So I've been going around asking, I wrote a letter to every single commissioner in the state of Florida, all 67 counties. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because I want the opportunity to let our local elected officials and residents weigh in. And I have to tell you, it's been incredibly supportive. Every single committee meeting, or every single commission meeting or city council meeting, there's been incredible amounts of support, like even like standing ovations at some. So I'm requesting that this county pass the resolution that I believe was emailed to each of you.
Thank you, and thank you for your efforts. And I can tell you, and I'm sure other people will echo what I'm saying, is that we've all experienced that. I was on the highway 95 headed down to Brevard County a week ago, and I had a lady, and I have a big truck, and she had a little tiny car, and I would have killed her. But she just came right over from the far lane all the way across, and she was about to hit me, and I just laid on my horn. And had I had a smaller car, maybe with that one of those teeny little horns, she might not have been as scared as she was. But with my big horn, she jumped and she looked up and she was texting. That's exactly what she was doing. And I've seen on 2 occasions in my travels motorcyclists texting, which just blows me away. Absolutely blows me away. So I think that, personally, I'm very much in favor of what you're doing, and I thank you so much. Any other comments, Commissioner Zardi?
That was from before.
Oh, okay. Anyone else have anything to say? Commissioner
Do we
Barfield?
have a resolution or anything that we...
Is there a
We-
resolution?
We can put one together if we don't have one. It doesn't have to be.
Was there a resolution up on the agenda, or? My legislative assistant said it was.
No, but we can certainly do that.
Oh, okay.
Ask a question.
Sure. Commissioner Pritchett.
I hate texting and driving too. I've got grandchildren. I hate the thought of it. Something else, I see people use their GPS all the time too. So I think it's something that we maybe just find a way to get all that encompassed. My car is awesome. I can click it and ask it questions, and it kind of takes care of it, reads me the emails and everything. It sends a few out. I wish it wouldn't. But I think that's something we really need to look into is to help people not to be so distracted. But I think we need to include that GPS element also.
That's exact. I was just speaking to the chief of police yesterday about this exact issue because of the fact there is an current exception to the law as a secondary offense that allows for GPS. So a lot of the secondary offenders are they're saying that they're on their GPS. However, the officer has, a dash cam or a video cam and is witnessing him for a mile texting. That's not navigation, that's texting. So that's right, though. I am going to work on something where we kind of remove that in the current, or in the law. I still have the bill in drafting, so.
Thank you.
Is there a statistic on distracted driving? Because I know you can be distracted if you drop your Big Mac on your belly and you pick it up, and or if you're changing radio stations and you have an older vehicle and you have to lean over and change the radio station, or whatever the distraction might be. A bee comes in the window, you drop your cigarette on your stomach or whatever.
Yeah, they have codes, and there's a distracted driving code with unknown, which encompasses a lot of different things, but there's a specific one for texting. So, and it's underreported. It's incredibly underreported because nobody's going to tell the officer that they were texting or...
Yeah. I had a major accident about 4 years ago. I was at a red light, and again, I was in my pickup truck, thank God, but I still got 5 herniated discs. Guy with a big car taxi driver. He was swatting at a bee, and he didn't see me stop, he didn't see the red light, and he just plowed into me at 35 miles an hour. And when I got out of my car, I went back to see how, because it was a big boom. It put my bumper right up against my back tires, and I went back to look at him to see if he was okay, and he said, yeah, I'm okay. I was swatting at a bee, and his hand, the hand that he was using to swat the bee, hit the windshield at 35 miles an hour. That's how fast he instantaneously stopped when he hit the back of my truck, and his hand was that fast. It was that big and purple and green, because his hand hit the windshield at 35 miles an hour. So distraction kills, and you can't legislate against it, but I think texting would be a big factor, because too many people do that.
Yeah, I mean, these are fatalities and injuries that are preventable, but we just need the legislation in place. And I've gotten many counties so far to support this resolution, so hopefully our leadership will listen.
Well, thank you. Mr.
Are you concerned about the repercussions that this may have on racial profiling of African American drivers?
Yes, I've been working with a few members of the Legislative Black Caucus, and I do have a provision in drafting that would make them enforce certain policies regarding racial profiling, similar to what they did in Illinois when Senator Barack Obama passed it in the state of Illinois. He put an anti-racial profiling rider.
Are you concerned about the metrics of the racial profiling for stops that increased greatly once a seatbelt became a secondary to a primary offense? It's pretty dramatic.
The difference here is that if you choose not to wear your seatbelt, you're only putting your own life in it's up to. But when you're texting and driving, there's no one else's.
But back to racial profiling. That was the safety wasn't the issue. Clearly, it's safer to not text. I'm not arguing there. I see how you're trying to pivot here. My issue is with minority drivers, and we've seen the time that we took a secondary offense and we made it a primary offense. The instances, according to the NAACP, went up quite a bit. I'd look at those statistics. I'm just, are you worried about it happening the exact same way for texting?
I put my trust in law enforcement, and there are a few bad apples that that do use it as a pretext to pull people over, but we are being cautious, and I am working with the Black Legislative Caucus on language that would satisfy.
Commissioner Nardi?
Yeah, I would just ask the commission, are you interested in seeing this resolution at the next meeting? Because we can make sure if you...
Not that it matters, but I'm not only not interested in seeing this as a resolution, I'm certainly not interested in seeing this as a state statute.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think it's necessary.
I mean, you only have to almost be hit about 17 times when you're driving your children around and being near fatal crashes yourself. And obviously, you have your own special circumstance to know that it's not just putting everyone else at risk. It's a serious issue. And if there's people racial profiling, well, shame on them. But I mean, I would be in support of it to have it on our next meeting's agenda.
Commissioner Barfield, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit more from Commissioner Tobia. Just from my own knowledge, why are you against it? What do you think could be done, or what, instead of not this, what else could be done?
First of all, there's distracted driving statutes on the books, but it's things like this that slowly decrease the freedom in America. So this is the way that red light cameras start, right? The fact that we claim that it's going to be safer to have red light cameras when the statistics don't bear that stuff out. And now we have it as a fundraising mechanism for many cities out there that draw a great deal of their resources from these type of mechanisms by claiming that they're there to help drivers when all it is to line the pocketbooks. Now, and I greatly admire you, and listen, your dad is absolutely wonderful. I had the privilege of serving with him. I've never seen an individual that cared as much. I don't think I was ever on the same side as letting Irv serve, but I greatly admired his passion and him as a person. But guys, this is how freedom slowly erodes. And when I brought up the Puerto Rico resolution, the response was, why is the county dealing with something that it's not in the purview. So I kind of find this as a terrible double standard here. I guess when I bring up a conservative issue, when it comes to resources, then it's probably not the greatest idea. But when, we have an issue that is eroding our freedom, even though it's not a county issue here, then it's probably a good idea that we run full force into it. If that's the way you want to take it, more power to you. I certainly will go with, I respect you enough the way that you respect me by allowing me to bring it up. I just want to point that irony out, and this will not be a unanimous resolution, so should it come forward, that please, don't have it in there.
Thank you for that input. I don't agree with the words you said, but I appreciate where you're coming from. I, too, am a conservative, and I, too, am concerned about losing freedoms. But at the same time, in this particular case, I'm looking at, I have grandkids that drive, I have a wife that drives, I have a daughter that drives. I drive, and I've seen the distraction involved with people that text and aren't paying attention. And they frankly aren't interested in my safety or anybody else's safety. I doubt that they're even interested in their own safety. They're certainly not thinking about what they're doing. And if we can save a couple of lives, a lot of lives, we're talking about, all we have to do is look at the success of the seatbelt law. And if we didn't have a law, I'd still be putting a seatbelt on because I value my life, and I insist that my grandkids have theirs on. In fact, if I don't, but my wife every now and then doesn't. And the grandkids get on her case so she doesn't forget. So I think if we can have that effect on the populace, I think it would be really good. And I'm not surprised that we have differing opinions. That's why they make chocolate vanilla. Everybody has a different opinion on what they agree with. So, and I think that's why it's important to have the strength of 5 members on a commission, because you get 5 different opinions. And sometimes that odd opinion changes other people's votes. But in this case, I think yours is a stellar idea, and I would certainly support a resolution. Do we have any other?
I appreciate it too, but I just want to go back to Commissioner Tobias for a minute. I wanted to say, 1, letter of service says hello, and he has a lot of respect for you. And 2, going back to liberty, you don't have the liberty to drink and drive. You don't have the liberty to text and drive. It is just as deadly. And the second thing about racial profiling, if an officer, currently every single other traffic offense is a primary offense. So if there is an officer, a bad officer out there, he doesn't need texting while driving, nor is he going to cite to texting while driving when he could say your tag looked expired or whatnot. So it's a harder argument to make that argument that they're going to use it as a...
Sorry, it's not my argument, it's that of the NAACP. So just to be very, very clear, It's an issue that I've looked into, and so have minority drivers, and it's of concern to them. So I think and clearly you're familiar with it because you're trying to work to alleviate it. Right. But I think we need to present all of the sides out there when it comes to putting legislation out there.
Okay. Commissioner Isnardi.
And I really don't want to beat a dead horse in this, and if anybody knows my history and remembers how hard I fought in Palm Bay and was successful at actually removing red light cameras, because I think that's a different and completely separate issue, because there's actual studies that prove that red light cameras cause more rear-end collisions and more accidents. Absolutely. And they are a big money grab, and they are a violation of your liberties. This, however, is just very cut and dry on what it is. This is a nonpartisan issue for me, and sometimes being nonpartisan is being the most rational head. So I would support it if it comes back, and I'd be happy to bring it back to this commission if the commission is interested.
Commissioner Pritchett.
Again, like I said, we can beat the issue to death and argue about who's more conservative or who's more libertarian or who's more worried about liberties. But I have children, and I have new children driving, and it's something I get on him about, never to do. And I've like I said, I've almost been in some pretty serious crashes because of other people doing the same thing. So, if I can pull you over for your seatbelt, I am actually more concerned about you texting, because your seatbelt, as you said, puts your safety at risk, but you texting puts my family's safety at risk. So,
Commissioner Pritchett, you have the floor.
I would support a resolution if you bring it back also. I remember I grew up, I know you're talking about the dead horse, but I couldn't help but bring this one up.
You had a dead horse.
No.
Oh, okay.
That's really funny. The age I grew up in, there was everybody drank and drove. I mean, everybody did. And if you got pulled over, you got a ticket. It wasn't a big deal. And then somebody kind of championed that, and the problems with that went way down. And I think texting and driving is probably as significant as drinking and driving, although, drinking by itself isn't illegal or wrong, but, it makes you so you're not able to drive a 2-ton weapon. And the same with this, you shouldn't be driving a car while you're texting. So I think it's something, I think we need to work on it. If nothing else, I think this is going to bring a lot of thought to families out there when they read it in the paper, Mr. Berman, and hopefully it'll start changing it from this night on.
Mr. Barfield.
Well, I'm going to keep beating the dead horse, I guess. I had a friend of mine at one time got his cliches mixed up, and he always said, it's like beating your head against a dead horse. So I'm not doing that. But anyway, I really think what you're doing, I really appreciate it. I'll support a resolution. We just need to get it done. And I think it's something important, especially with teenagers, and we have grandkids, and there's a lot of things that need to happen. But if it saves one life, it's worth it.
Especially if it's somebody you know. Ms.
Thank you.
Schlossberg, I appreciate you being here and your time
I'd like to
and
see
your
all
efforts.
of you except Commissioner Tobias out for $25 and under. No, kidding. I really appreciate it. So it will be on the next agenda?
Yes, we'll have it the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving to 5C.
Commissioners, item 5C is us bringing back to you the FEC railway aerial easement for the Pineda overpass. If you recall, we previously had approved a contract. We've now worked out all the details associated with that, and we're very happy with the agreement as it is. We also found it necessary to amend the lease agreement for the existing ground crossing for the intervening period of time during the construction of the overpass. And I realize I jumped on top of Mr. Holmes. So in any event, we're very happy about the agreement, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Pleasure of the board.
I make a motion that we approve this and the agreement.
We have a motion and a second to approve the perpetual aerial easement agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to new business. 6-1.
This is
681.
a public sidewalk easement agreement from the Vieira Company in favor of Brevard County on property within the plat of Lauren Cove at Addison Village. This is a easement that allows construction of a sidewalk in the location that it got constructed.
I move that we approve this easement agreement.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. 6A2.
This is a replacement contract with CCI for the Indian River Isles muck dredging project. The project has experienced numerous delays, and we ended up sending a failure to perform notice, a third failure to perform notice in July with liquidated damages starting on July 5th. The contract expired July 3rd. The project, thankfully, as of Friday, is now complete. And so contractually, and in order to maximize the county's ability to get reimbursement for this project through a state grant, we prepared a replacement contract for your consideration that would extend the contract date through August 15th and remove some miscellaneous deliverables that have not been received that are not a requirement for our grant reimbursement and we can live without at this point. And I believe that the contractor would like to request that you consider abating some of the liquidated damages.
We have a speaker, Jeff Sahara.
Hi, I'm Jeff Sarak. I'm with CCI. The reason why I'm here, obviously, is we took a long time to do this job. We had all kind of incidents that took place. Some of it you can look into, you can ask me. But in short, this job went up for bid last year. The lowest bid was $200,000. It wasn't enough in the budget, so Indian River Isles asked why I wasn't involved in that because my price was lower than that, and from a verbal standpoint, I kind of went with my partner on maybe we should not do the job. But as it is, we took the job on for $90,000, and during that time we incurred a lot of problems, manatees. Our spoil site location that we were taking it to, which we were getting reimbursed to take the materials there, was not allowed by the city of Malabar, so we had to find another location. We got into the rainy season. We had, if you recall, a couple months ago, we had 3 weeks of solid rain. We're dealing with muck in a very tight, small area, so it filled up our reservoir, and it was basically like soup. In short, we did manage to get everything taken care of. The dredging was done, completed. None of the residents had any problems with anything. We did no damage to the streets, no damage to the neighborhood. We removed a lot of muck from the property without any inconveniencing anybody. We couldn't work on weekends because there's a lot of boat traffic out there. But anyway, in short, the job was a $90,000 job. We got a $20,000 mobilization back last year, and it's been really difficult. We had a machine breakdown, cost us $20,000 to rent another machine. We're just glad it's over. As it is right now, even if you didn't hold $1 back from us, we barely can break even. So if you do decide to use this $950 a day impact on us, it pretty much wipes us out. It would be very hard for us to recoup. So job's done 100%, looks good, everybody's happy, and we hope that you will consider taking it easy on us.
Commissioner Pritchett.
I was able to talk to Ms. Barker for a while, and I know the damages were $27,789, but you told me that the actual cost to the county was $5,900?
Yes.
Correct. So I would be willing to, and you were going to help me with this motion, so I worded it correctly, so bring it down from that just to the amount that covers our cost. And Ms. Barker, would you go ahead and say that for me?
Okay. I think you want to move option 1, which is approval of attachment D, the contract attached to your agenda item, with the liquidated damages reduced to $5,900.
Yes, ma'am.
We'd be happy with that at this point. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Oh, we have, yes, okay, sorry. Mr. Tobias.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm sure you were going to pick this up because, you know, you're a businessman here. But help me. Isn't this going to encourage low bids when we sign contracts and then we abate the penalties in those contracts? Won't that be an incentive for this type of behavior, maybe not by this individual, but by other individuals to do this? My question were these two, the county, I think, was an intelligent entity entering in a contract. I think this gentleman here is an intelligent individual entering into this contract. I just don't think that by abating more than $20,000 of mutually agreed upon potential penalties puts the county in a good position as we move forward. So my question to you, am I off base here, Ms. Barker, or do you believe that that statement would be factually correct?
It's a difficult question. And so we've certainly debated that internally. You don't want to send a signal that contractors can claim they're going to get the work done and then pay no attention to the schedule. And, you know, the liquidated damages clause are in county contracts for a reason. So the number that the county lands on sort of, you know, it needs to send a signal that the contract is the contract, and when you contract with the county for a certain job, that's what the county expects you to do, and that's the time frame that you have to do it. On the other hand, as Mr. Sakara said, they were the only contractor willing to take on this job for the budget that was available. And they have stuck with the project and overcome, you know, quite a few adversities out there. We wouldn't have gotten this project done without them. So I think there's leeway for the county commission to adjust the liquidated damages here, but still send a message to folks that a contract is a contract.
A follow-up, please.
Thank you.
So the issues I heard were manatees. I don't know anything about dredging, but I understand there's manatees out there. The rainy season, which I think historically we could look out and find out that it is rainy. Boat traffic, which should not be surprising that we have boat traffic out there. And a machine breakdown, which is not any of the county's concern, in all honesty. So if there had been something out of the norm, I think we would have a good argument for maybe abating some of this. But none of these I'm seeing. In your opinion, let me ask you, was there unusually high manatees sightings? Were there unusually high boat traffic that would lead to this? And you said to send a message. What dollar figure, in your opinion, because the $5,900 that was suggested, the motion that currently on the table, is just to recoup our costs. It's sending the message that, please, bid low, sign a contract, and we will not exercise our portion of that contract. For a minute, I don't believe that anyone that accepts our contract, and we don't pay them within a certain time, would for 1 second forgive any amount of interest out there, you know, as we move forward. So my question is, A, were any of these unusual, the manatees, the rain, or the boat? And B, what is that fair, to quote unquote send a message? If the $27,789 is too much, and the $5,900 is being held zero, what, in your opinion, would be that message?
So the first question is, I think, the easier one, so I'll take that one first. The one unusual item that wasn't on the list that you brought up was that the contractor was responsible for securing a dredge material management area. The county tried to work with the Homeowners Association to do that in advance, and we were unsuccessful. This project was actually bid twice. The first bid came in very high, and the contractor was willing to negotiate down to the budget that was available if the county was able to provide a dredge material management area. The only lot in the project area that was undeveloped and large enough to function this way is owned by someone who is very difficult to reach and appears to not trust the government. And so it didn't matter how we attempted communication with that owner, we were not able to get to them. We even tried registered mail, and it was all sent back, returned to sender. So this contractor was able to secure the permission to use that site, which was absolutely necessary for getting this project done. And no other contractor stepped forward to do that.
May I add something too? May I add
Absolutely.
I was contacted by the county 2.5 years ago when you guys first got money, looking like it was available to do some dredging projects. you needed a permit on these projects. I'm pretty much the only dredging contractor in Brevard County at that time. There's a lot of new guys in here, but I've been doing this in this area for quite a long time. When he contacted me on it, I already paid $2,500 for the entire neighborhood's permitting and did all the research and everything that was required to do it. So that was why that neighborhood, the only eligibility for this funding was because I paid for the permit, which I never did get reimbursed for. Also, when I came into this, I'm not a legal person. I know how to dredge. I'm a dirt dauber. That's what I do for a living, okay? I have a partner who supposedly knows how to do this. He's made a couple mistakes and kind of put me in this position. But my point is, I wanted $45,000 to start this job, just like I do. This is the first time I've worked for the county on a dredging project. I've worked for SeaWorld, I have worked for the state of Florida, and I've worked for the military doing dredging projects. And my requirements are always met, or I just don't do the job. So when I came where I wanted half the money up front, and then it came out to where it wasn't going to be that way at all, and I was actually having to go there, go to work, and work for a while before I got my first mobilization, I wanted to decline. The neighborhood itself had other dredging projects in there, which we already done most of, okay? They kind of asked me, well, we've got work too, so maybe that'll kind of compensate you for the loss of not getting the mobilization that you were looking for. So two things. One is I stuck out this job. I did it where I took quite a loss. I didn't tell you, but when I first came in the neighborhood, I damaged my barge on a reef that's in there. I made a coquina rock. It took 2 weeks to fix the barge. I didn't have that in my letter. I didn't write the letter. My partner did. So I've taken a lot of. I'm not just the average guy coming in here, and yeah, if you don't make an example out of me, everybody's going to do it, because quite honestly, I don't think you would have had anybody to do the job to begin with. So that being said, I just hope you consider that when you.
Commissioner Barfield, you have the floor.
So, Ms. Parker, was the job completed to all the standards y'all needed? It was just late? Or it was an acceptable job? Acceptable?
I would say the as-built surveys show that what was completed at least met the contract provisions. There are a lot of complaints that staff has along the way in the process. 3 failure to proceed notices is something I've never experienced in my 20 years here. So the procurement process that we have in place, there's a feedback mechanism for that. There will be black marks on this contractor in terms of trying to get future work with the county. So there are those other ways that messages are sent besides
he did
fiscal
meet the requirements.
punitive.
He met the requirements and bottom
Yes.
at the end of the whole thing.
If you adopt Attachment D, which removes a few miscellaneous requirements that he did not meet, then he will have met his contractual obligations in full.
Well, when we're talking about liquidated damages, and most of the time, in my experience, and you have a contractor that you want liquidated damages, and I'm sure this happens, Mr. Denninghoff, in the public works, you have something goes really bad, you have to call another contractor to finish it, or you have to do something else. That's what liquidated damages come from. It's what is it going to cost you to get to that point of closure, because you're going to have to go spend more money. And that's where that damages come from. I kind of have a problem, this is a whole other issue, but when we put in a contract, we're going to go tell them what the liquidated damages are per day. I think we might want to look at doing that differently, where this is a penalty per day, and this is what the actual liquidated damages would be.
You can't put penalties in contracts.
Federal government doesn't.
I know.
We Trust me, I know.
State law doesn't let you do that.
Okay. But anyway, liquidated damages are based on what is it going to really cost in the end. So really what it's cost us, besides a lot of frustration, is it's cost us the staff time. And so I'm okay with that $5,900, dropping it to $5,900, because that really is truly what the damage was to us. There was a lot of, a lot of heartache and a lot of other stuff, and probably you and everybody's just frustrated, and I understand that. So I can go with the $5,900.
Commissioner Zanardi.
And maybe I missed it in the package. I mean, do we have a breakdown of this $5,900? I know it's staff time, but
No, there's not a breakdown in your package. It's something we worked on after we submitted the package. But
Okay.
we've had, that includes the county attorney's time as well as the staff time in our department, multiple conference calls with the state, because obviously we're extremely close to the state grant deadline, keeping them informed of the progress of the contractor, and numerous site visits, coordination with the consultant who has to certify completion. There's been a lot going on a daily basis since his contract expired July 3rd.
It just seems like a lot for a month's time and a few interactions. I think, and I understand why you put that in a contract, that $958, but I think even something to get to the level of $27,000 is just punitive. And I know, should we set an example out of this gentleman that actually came in, and I know you may not be happy with the work he's done, but if his cost was less than half of what we were getting to begin with, there's something to be said for that too. And if you're breaking even by doing this, and I know it's not our job to make sure that your company makes money, but at the same time, the job is done and it's done to standard. So, I'm okay with the $5,900, but I'm okay with waiving it altogether because the job is complete. This is what you do for a living. Things happen. I'm not saying excuses are always a good thing, but, we are all human, and you did do the job for half of the original cost of what it was bidding in at before. So there's something to be said for that, too, when you can save the county $100,000 in essence. I'm not saying that you deserve credit for that, but I'm just saying, that the job is half the cost. So, again, it's up to the commission. I'll support the $5,900, but I would support just waiving it altogether, and just in light of the circumstances and in light of the fact that the job is complete.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, I thought about that too, just when I was able to talk to Ms. Barker, and it just cost extra tax dollars, and I thought that would bring us up to neutral position. So, you did the job and you got it done, and you might have been low bidding, but I think that was more a benefit than to the county because we probably save money down the road. So, and you said you're comfortable with the $5,900?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so then I would like to go ahead to make the motion.
As
then.
opposed to the alternative.
Yes, sir. To adopt attachment A with the damages being changed to $5,900. Did I say that correctly, Ms. Barker?
D.
Oh, I'm sorry, D, it's right there, D. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the proposal of $5,900. Excuse me.
Sorry.
Commissioner Abate, you have a little button to push there.
Yeah, I thought I pressed it. I tried to. Just two quick comments, and that is, what was involved here, and I can tell you Natural Resources staff has become and is extremely sensitive to contract deadlines. And so one reason for liquidated damages clause also is to assure that we don't jeopardize the contract, which was very, very close in this particular case. As a matter of fact, Mr. Denninghoff and his staff was ready in case that this contract was not going to be able to, the contractor wasn't going to be able to get everything done in time to mobilize so that we did not jeopardize the contract. So the fact that the board is willing to look at liquidated damages and offset it is good, but there are reasons for some penalties associated because it does protect the county moving forward where we could otherwise lose what would have been a $90,000 grant. And that's one of the reasons staff has tried to stay on top of this and spent time to assure we did not get ourselves into that situation and then sometimes face additional consequences that would be otherwise unexpected. So we appreciate the board's deliberations on this, but I want to make sure we shared that as well.
Well, it appears to me that both sides have been aggravated, and at the end of the day, I hate that term, but when all is said and done, I don't like that one either. We got the work done. The county saved approximately $110,000, and with $5,900 punitive damages, we're made whole, and the job's done, and hopefully you can go off and make some more money somewhere else. And we appreciate you doing the job. So we have a motion on the, Mr. Tobias, you have another comment?
I would just like, and thank you for answering the first question, and I know that it got, can you answer the second question? And also, I would like, Mr. Abate, if you can chime in here. You're going to have to enter, you deal with these contracts on a daily basis, or on a weekly basis, or whatever the case may be. So you're the one that has to, deal with the repercussions of us forgiving that without sending any message whatsoever. So is that, what is that message? If the 27,000 is too strong of a message, is the 5,900 no message whatsoever? Is there a middle ground here that doesn't say to every contractor that does business with Brevard County, sign a contract, don't worry about it, we'll forgive you when the time comes? Because that's the message we're sending right now with $5,900. Help me, is there a middle ground that you see?
I don't know what the number would be, but I would try to think about profit margin, and you probably want to eat into the profit margin without having them suffer a loss that risks them, firing employees or going out of business, or, other sorts of impacts to our economy that aren't what you want.
But we don't have that ability, right? I don't know the profit margin on dredging. He said he's a dirt guy, and I greatly respect that. I'm not, and I'm smart enough not to enter into contract that on something that I have absolutely no idea. So I can't take profit margin into. All I can take is the next time you're sitting across from a contractor going over a contract where it says it has a penalty, and I'm on the other side of that table saying, hey, they're going to forgive it. It doesn't matter all the time. What is that number where that contractor is going to say, hey, maybe I do need to get this work done on time, and maybe I'm not going to enter the lowest, the lowest bid that I can, write off this potential loss? Is there a number? Is that number 15,000? Is that number? I don't want to put you in a bad position. And if we vote on this $5,900, we have put you in a bad position when it comes to negotiating these type of contracts. What is that number?
I appreciate that. And Mr. Denninghoff may have a different opinion from his infrastructure work, but typically what we see in dredging contractors is that they put the majority of their profit in the MOB-DEMOB line. And for this particular contract, half of his 90,000 was in that MOB-DEMOB line. And so in an ordinary situation, I would look at this contract and I would say, maybe 20,000 of that was profit. But because we know that we went to bid twice, and we had a bid of $292,000, and we had another bid of $200,000, and then we had his bid of $90,000, I don't believe there was that sort of profit margin in this job.
But he was a willing participant that knew the $90,000 and did the calculation. No hands were held or arms tied behind the back. This was an individual. We can't use the profit margin theory. Is there a number? I'm just trying to look out for you. Is there a number that doesn't put you in a bad position when it comes to the millions of dollars of bids that you will be dealing with our Indian River Lagoon funding? I understand that this is $90,000, so it's a drop in the bucket. But I would hate to think that if this was a $900,000 project or a $9 million project, that we would act as cavalierly as we are right now by saying the contract that you signed, it doesn't matter. You got it done.
I don't know that we're acting cavalierly. And I think most of your questions would be better directed to Mr. Knox, because you're talking about legal situations that we're getting ourselves into that we may or may want to forgive or not forgive, and what is the consequences going forward.
Are you the one, I don't know, maybe I could, are you the one that negotiated this contract? Is your department the one that negotiated this contract?
Oh, we always work with the county attorney and purchasing on what the contract terms are. We don't make up the liquidated damages number on our own. So it's a group effort.
Okay, so I'll If that, and you're more than welcome, I'm sorry to put pressure, I'll ask the county attorney. Is there a number that sends, as Ms. Parker said, sends a message that this type of behavior is not necessarily tolerated by the county, other than just making us whole?
Generally, the number we stick in the contract is where we think the line ought to be. And that's kind of what we sort of wrangle it around, we discuss it, and there's sort of a formula used to figure out what the number ought to be. The number in the contract is the number.
So in your opinion, is the $5,900 reasonable?
Well, that's, you know.
That's for us to decide. And I'm going to call the question. We have a motion on the floor, and we have a second.
Do you have a second?
Do we have a second?
Was a motion yet?
The motion was to accept the $5,900 with
To authorize the chair to
attachment D.
execute attachment D with the liquidated damages reduced to $5,900.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. I was just looking to see if we had another dead horse out here, because we spent a lot of time on this. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and all those in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, passes 4-1. Mr. Tobias, the nay vote.
Do I have a comment, maybe ask a question, is this possible, or is it not?
No.
Okay.
We're done.
Thank you.
Okay,
Maybe he should.
6B, 1.
Good evening, Commissioners. This item is to request the board's approval to have the chair sign a non-binding letter of intent for the Brevard Health Alliance to seek matching dollars through what's called the low-income pool. This is a procedure that is done by the federal government where the state of Florida applies for and is granted a waiver for Medicaid dollars, and they set aside dollars that they use as match. In this instance, these match dollars are specific to hospitals and what are called FQHCs, federally qualified health clinics. And so Brevard Health Alliance is a health clinic. What would happen is, in this letter of intent, it basically is just saying that as long as dollars are available, we are willing to move forward. It does not bind the county to anything. Part of this also is, the history of this is, we did this for a number of years, back in 09 through 2013. And at that point, the health department and the Brevard Health Alliance were able to access the dollars. Back then, and again, because you have to use tax dollars for this, the health department already gets a allocation of general fund dollars that they were able to use as the match. The Brevard Health Alliance did not, and so the Health First Foundation stepped up, provided those match dollars as a donation to the county to offset the dollars that are used as a match to draw down. In this instance, Brevard Health Alliance is looking at basically entering into that agreement. The Health First Foundation has agreed to put the dollars up again as a cash donation. We would, after this letter of intent, we would have an agreement that would come back to the board in September, and we would look at doing a BCR in October to be able to move forward with this. So at all aspects of this and all steps, we'd have that before the board to have your approval. We will ask that the Health First Foundation provide that cash donation when that agreement comes back to you, so the dollars are in hand and in the accounts. The letter of intent, you'll notice the very last line kind of makes it, talks about if additional funding opportunities, that it would be handled the same way. The reason that language is in here is because the pot of money, we have had some other counties not have the ability to use all the dollars that are available. So as more dollars become available from that pool that are left over, this will allow the Health Alliance and the Health First Foundation to access those dollars. For example, we originally started out at a $709,000 match. We're now already up to $738,000. And that $738,000 will draw down $1.9 million from those federal dollars.
Pleasure of the board.
I make a motion that that the chairman sign the letter of intent for the low-income pool.
A second?
We have a Motion to approve the letter of intent approval for the chairman's signature. We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, we have one comment card for speaker. Public comments, Pam LaSalle.
Pamela Salviera. The point of my comment on the cone of silence was to make it part of an ordinance, not a procedure. An ordinance has consequences that a procedure may not. You may disqualify someone who violates your procedure, but an ordinance has consequences which are not always punitive. Ordinances can create a desired behavior where we don't have to watch over folks. And so that I wanted to make that clarification.
Okay, board reports. Mr. Abate.
I have two items for the board. One, and I'm passing out a memo that I sent out to the board on Wednesday, August 2nd, dealt with providing the board information that was requested concerning options that the board brought up and wanted to have information about relative to salary increases that were alternative proposals that the board discussed to the one that is in the county manager's recommended budget. So we have provided that information, including 4 different options. Soon after that board meeting, I did get some feedback from one or more charter offices that indicated, whether or not they, would be or could be included in any such proposals if the board chose to move forward. So staff, in addition to doing what the board asked, which was to tell you what the salary, the dollar impact to the general fund would be for each of the options, we did, just for the board's information, put in there the information that was provided to us by charter officers, that if that same increase were provided to the charter officers, what would the general fund impact be to their budget. So that information on an annualized basis is provided and is one of the attachments that was on that particular email. The reason I bring it up under reports is because for the budget office, if in fact we are to move forward, we would prefer, if it was the board's desire, to give us that information relative to you'd like to see a different option other than the one we put forth, that we have the time during the next few weeks in August before the first budget hearing to make those adjustments in each of the departments' budgets and SAP, et cetera, so that if you wanted to move in that direction, we could. And so I just put it out there in terms of seeing if the board wants to have any discussion or provide any direction on that relative to the options that we provided. And you'll recall that those options related to as opposed to what was currently there, which was a tiered approach that capped things for employees at the $70,000 range at 3%, that being the high point. What we did was look at a 3.5% option that was across the board for everyone. We also gave the board a 3.5% option that was tiered so that the lower paid employees would still get 4%. And then we looked at a 4% across the board COLA. And I've given you those, the general fund impact for, once again, the board employees, and then for the total general fund impact if the charter officers were included as well.
Commissioner Pritchett.
I have two propositions. Either I would like to stick with what the county manager originally proposed, if we're agreeable as a commission to go ahead with the pay study and be willing to impact that pay study over the next few years to catch up staff, which would take quite a commitment. I think, I'm not sure what the percentages would be, or I wouldn't mind going with Commissioner Isnardi's idea with number 3 last week of going ahead and making the split and doing 3.5% across the board and just doing a $380,000 adjustment. My only concern would be County Manager Abate, if that would be sustainable moving forward, because that's something we would have to go ahead and do for the next future years too, because you can't give it this year and take it back next year. So is that correct, sir? If we did the 3.5 across the board COLA, you would be able to sustain it the next year?
Yeah, I mean, it would be too early, obviously, to predict what other factors are going to come between now and next year. But with the money that we put into this year's reserve, we believe that some of those dollars would be reoccurring dollars that would be available. So that's where we would suggest that the board looked at. That's where we would pull the dollars from for this year if we did that. I can tell you that, excuse me, the impact that we gave you for the 3.5, if it was the tiered approach, which was $488,000, that was a full year impact. The sheriff's office provided us information that said that their impact was actually $120,000, approximately less than that, which would make it about $360,000, because his increase is given in February, and so the remainder of that was that $120,000 that you see there would actually occur in the following fiscal year. We included it in here because it would show the larger number, because it is the full one-year annualized impact based on the information that we received. So the answer to your question is yes, I do believe we would be in a position to do that if the board chose to move in that direction.
Okay, because compared to what you had given us, and you already had a pay increase adjusted into yours, this is an extra $381,000 moving forward. So I think I like that plan as compared to the almost $1 million, 4%. So I would be comfortable with the 3.5 if somebody wanted to go there, or if we would get into a consensus of doing a pay study and making adjustments over the next few years.
Commissioner Tobias, you have the floor.
Thank you, and I'd like to reserve comment on the pay plan, but I would definitely second Commissioner Pritchett's idea on an independent study. The last time the county did one, it was more than 10 years ago, and obviously there's been some great changes since then. And I appreciate Mr. Visco's attempt at this, but I'm looking at the chart, and a couple of times on this chart, the mid salary is higher than the max salary, which not very good at math, but I think the max should be the highest. And so I understand he didn't have much time with this, but there's a lot of issues with not only the independence issues, but math issues with the study that we received. So I believe, putting out maybe an RFP to get something and then dedicating that, I'll throw in my 2 cents since I got the floor. I would go with the staff recommendation on this. I think an across the board is only going to exacerbate the issues that we have. If you take some of the stuff on Mr. Visco's study, you've got some folks that are more than 10% above the average, and this is going to make that that difference much larger. On the other hand, you've got folks that, an example, Office of the Clerk make an average here of $20,883, which, according to Mr. Visco, is 39.3% less than the average. So we're not making up the gap. I think that we need something independent, but the tiered approach is going to focus in on the folks that need it the most at the bottom of our pay scale, and hold us over till next year when we can target in on the folks that maybe attrition is causing to leave and deal with it, instead of just a Band-Aid of a 3, 4, 5. I mean, I'd love to give everyone a 10% raise, but it just is not something that is feasible. So I think a targeted approach, and I think an independent approach that Commissioner Pritchett mentioned is a very good idea. Now, it took about 6 months. So this is nothing, the last one 10 years ago took 6 months. So this is nothing that we could get for this budget year, but it is certainly something that we could ask to get for next budget year and make a commitment. I certainly would make a commitment to go after and try to close those gaps and get us as close to, the median as possible.
Commissioner Barfield.
Yes, I thought we did talk about saying where we would get an independent. I think we had that discussion. I think we do need to go out for an RFP. I think it's very important we do that. But I would like to suggest, we have, I would suggest we do the 3.5%, the tiered one, which means those with less, the lower end paid people would, I think they're the ones, I think it would work better if we tiered it. So I would suggest we do the 3.5% tiered. And this is an adjustment. When you look at the turnover we've had and a lot of other things, we need to make this adjustment. We have not, if I remember right, 2% is 2 or 3% is all we've had since 2007, something like that. And you look at under the Sheriff's Department, both civilian and badged, it's close to 18% over that time period. Now, I understand there's different issues with unions and stuff like that, but still, it's obvious we're way behind. So I feel good if we go 3.5%. I'd love to see 4% across, but I think 3.5% if we do the tiered approach. I think we're targeting it better that way.
Commissioner Isnardi.
Are you talking about the item or option 4 or the county manager's tiered?
On the memo number 3, the third bullet.
The third bullet isn't tiered. The number 4
No.
is the tiered one? Or, you're looking at the memo?
Yeah.
Okay, I was looking at the spreadsheet. So I guess we're looking at two different documents. That's all right. Okay. My thoughts on the reason why I like the 3.5% across the board, because we have issues. Of course, I think everybody agreed that we need to do a study, definitely, and there's no question. But the reason why I like the 3.5 across the board is because it made it fair, at least in my opinion, because you have people that work very hard to get certifications, people even in the $40,000 or $50,000 range that worked hard to either stick with the county and stick through some of those hard times where they've got nothing, as much as the new guy that may be lower on the totem pole. We also have people in the mid-pay range that we're losing because they're not making enough money as well. So, if it were up to me, I think it's fair and equitable to everyone. People that go and they get degrees and they get certifications, we have engineers and otherwise, they've earned every dollar and they've earned the pay increase. So my option would be for the 3.5 across the board and the COLA. But again, I'll go with the will of the board. I'm excited about a pay study because I don't think anybody up here would disagree that we need to do that.
Yeah, I'll weigh in on this also. I think it's extremely important that we send a message to our county employees that we understand that they've worked very hard, they've stuck with us, the ones that have stuck with us, and that we want to keep them, and we recognize their importance. And while it would be nice if we could do more, we want them to recognize that we understand their situation, and we're going to work at trying to rectify this, and this is the first step. Commissioner Pritchett.
Yeah, I'm excited about this, that we're going to do a pay study, and Commissioner Tobias, I'm very good to hear that you would support the pay study and making the changes. So I think what we should do is do what the county manager had, because he had 4% at one end up to 3% at another end. And then he's got that already in the budget, and then we can use the extra money to go do a pay study, because that's not going to be free. Independent studies are free. So I'm thinking we should go ahead and stay with number 1, the salary increase that Mr. Tobias had brought in, and then move forward with the pay study, and then be willing to start making those adjustments in future years to get staff up to competitive rates. And I think that's a really good move to do, because I haven't seen everybody's pay, and I just think it's what we need to do. Some of these raises need to be very big, and some of them maybe not as big. Everybody needs raises. So I think that's the responsible thing to do at this point, because the county manager did come in with number 1 that he thought it was appropriate pay raise to begin with. So I'm going to make a motion to do number 1 with the pay study moving forward.
Commissioner
See, and the
Snarty.
difference to me, the logic for me, if you're making between $20,000 and $30,000, if you're making a 3.5% increase as opposed to a 4.5%, or as opposed to a 0.5%, isn't that big of a leap for them. It's not like they're going to get an extra $3,000 or $5,000 a year. So it's not, to me, I think, again, I won't repeat it. I'll just say that I think it should be fair across the board.
Well, we have a motion on the board, on the floor. If we don't have a second, it will fail.
The one that Commissioner Pritchett?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll second that one.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments?
I'd like
Mr.
to
Barfield?
see us go a little bit more somehow, and I'd like to see us go a little bit more than that somehow across the board. Because you have to understand, if I'm right, Mr. Abate, didn't we do this before at a tiered?
Yeah, 2 years ago, I believe, we had a tiered increase similar to the one that was on option number one, which is the current proposal. I think we did that 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I'd much rather see us, in that case, I'd rather see us go, what Commissioner Snarty says, across the board. I think, since we've done that once, I think now would be best to do that, because we have continued to penalize the people that are above that level. I say it's not really penalizing, they're not getting as much of an increase. So I would think it'd be best right at this point to adjust everything equally.
We have a motion on the floor and a second.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Before we vote on this, it appears, I don't want to put anyone in the awkward position of voting against. I think that's, I think we've all said our piece. We have the Isnardi plan, for lack of a better, and the Pritchett plan, and I think each one's got two, but not a majority. So it comes down to you, Mr. Chair. Why don't you weigh in on this one and let us know? I think that's going to be the determining factor when it comes to this. So of these two, or another one, Mr. Chair.
That's a good idea.
What would your suggestion be?
Okay, I'm on the spot. I'm good. I like the idea of a 4% across the board, but
We weren't talking 4.
what were you talking?
Started at
You're all
4,
by
but now
yourself.
I'm giving it
You
3.5.
were okay with 3.5.
Okay, so you're saying 3.5 across the board?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I suggested.
Well,
This
Never-
one right here.
Never give us 4 choices.
yeah,
Give us 2.
okay.
Yeah, way to go.
It was 5 choices.
Yeah.
This is one Christine likes. I'm sorry, this one here,
Right,
number 3,
right.
with that much dollars added
Right.
to the budget.
Yeah, I like Christine's.
Yay.
good.
I'm going to amend my motion to go with number 3, and then with a pay study, 3.5% across the board, and a commitment to do a pay study.
I'll second.
Okay, now we have a motion and a second. Did you withdraw your, you just altered
Well, you
your,
might want to amend the second.
so are you going to amend
Well,
your second?
my second is dead once, I believe.
Once I amended
Once
it?
you pulled it, my second
I'm
is
really bad
dead.
at this, okay.
So do we have a second? We do have a second, okay. All those in favor of the new proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
My one question would be, does that include the charter officers in terms of when we amend the budget, or is it just for the board employees?
My understanding, it was just for the board employees.
Okay. All right. That's ultimately going to be the board's decision. I do believe the charter officers were interested in trying to mirror what the board does, but
I would prefer to include the charter officers.
need
That's,
cost too, right?
that would be my opinion only.
excuse me?
Do we have dollar cost?
Those dollar costs are there. And actually, that is the $380,000.
Wonderful. Okay.
Include it?
Yes.
Can we discuss that? That's a sizable difference in the motion that we just, and it's
No,
my-
that is the number. Is that not correct?
It's on there, he said.
No. I was under the understanding that we just voted on the increase of $104,236, not including the general fund impact. So that's a difference of whatever,
$276,000 difference.
$276,000 difference. So, yeah, I would not be in support if if we were going to make that. Not that that'll change the determination, but I could not go forward with that. My understanding is the charter offices have turned in their budget requests, is that correct?
Yes, they have.
Okay,
Yes, they
so
have.
I think that that would be a little bit difficult, to take that into consideration. I don't blame them for asking, because if I was a charter officer, I would be asking that as well. But it brings upon a whole can of worms when we look at other negotiations that we're in, and I know there are certain things we can and cannot say, but I think that that puts us in not the greatest bargaining, position, and I certainly want to look at that as we move forward. So, if she wants, if we could have another motion, one way or another, I don't care whether it's to include or not include, but if we can,
Yeah, it would have to come from a motion.
Did we specify, or?
We did not.
At this time, what we need is, I think, a follow-up motion to indicate whether the charter officers would be included in this.
I think this time we should not include them, so we can have discussions later if we need to.
I will second that motion.
Not that we might not, but.
Okay, so the answer is no. We're not going, there's no motion
Are you going to take a vote on that?
to not include?
Yes.
Okay. Why, it wasn't included in the first place, so why do we need a motion? Mr. Knox?
This is true.
I understood the first motion to just include the county employees, and if there's no motion to add the constitutional officers, then that's what it is.
Exactly.
Very good. The last item I have under the reports is that I would request that the board, since there is no topic for the workshop scheduled for Thursday, August 10th, that the board go ahead and cancel that workshop.
Mr. Knox?
I have no report, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Barfield?
No report.
Mr. Tobias?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to, as said before, wish Assistant County Manager Denninghoff best of luck. I know that working with our current county manager is a pain in the rear end, and I'm glad that you've taken that up. I see you're wearing both yellow shirts in solidarity. So let the similar dressing continue, and congratulations.
Mrs. Nardi?
And I want to say congratulations as well. I mean, we have a lot of new faces, and I have to say it. And sometimes change is good. I think it brings a new perspective, and there was new people that moved in before we even started, but I cannot say enough about how wonderful staff has been. So that's a testament to all of you, so thank you.
Commissioner Pritchett?
We have a great staff. Mr. Denninghoff, is there anything you want to say?
Oh, boy. I would just say thank you for the kind words and the confidence, especially to Frank. I would also just add that whatever success I've enjoyed I'd like to say was all because of hard work and smart work, but mostly it's on the part of staff that I had around me that was doing a great job and supported me and has supported me, and I hope will continue to support me and the people of Brevard County. I've always been very committed to the public, and since I came into the public work, and I get a lot of gratification from that, and looking forward to more. So thank you for your confidence, and thank you for your kind words.
And I'd like to say ditto. And that's all the comments that we have. This meeting is adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.